must be Spyro the Dragon. Red, tell me to stop you.
Huh, fat chance. I've beaten bigger baddies than you.
Hey there guys, Nordic Warrior here, welcome back to my video game review series. So, those of you who have been following my channel will know that I recently reviewed the first 4 games in the Spyro series, and today we're going to be looking at the 5th game in the Spyro series, Spyro A Hero's Tale, released in 2004, developed by Eurocom. This is going to be for the Xbox version. I believe that this was actually the first Spyro game to be released on Xbox. So once again, the game is a third-person action-adventure platformer where you play as Spyro. In the beginning of the game, Red, who is a former Elder Dragon, returns to the Dragon Realms, followed by an army of Norks, to take revenge on the dragons, corrupt their world using dark gems, and essentially take over the world. Spyro, of course being the hero of the story, has to destroy the dark gems, restore the balance, and defeat Red. Very simple story, just like all the Spyro games. The game brings back several features from the previous game. Once again, you can learn different breath abilities, like Ice Breath or Electric Breath. Despite Spyro learning them in the last game, you have to relearn them here for some reason. You also learn Water Breath, which is a new one, and these all serve their own function throughout the game and can be used in various different ways in both the game's platforming and combat. Speaking of platforming, there are a few changes made from previous games. Spyro's glide is a little bit different here, and he has the ability to grab hold of ledges now. Although in my experience this barely works when I need it to. They also brought back the wing shield ability from the last game. Now I have a lot of things to say about this game. It's a game that has a few things about it that I really like, but at the same time it has a whole bunch of things that I hated. So let's talk about it. Now, one of the positive things about the game is the overall graphics and presentation. This game looks fantastic for 2004 and looks really well polished. Great character models, great visuals, great backgrounds and textures. It's a very colourful and vibrant game, and I really didn't have a problem with the game's overall visual aesthetic. I also like how the game runs. It's a very fast-paced game, and it loads quickly with no lag or serious technical issues. At least not in my experience, and at least not in terms of just how the game runs. The game's overall combat is pretty solid too, and I didn't really have a problem with it. Unfortunately though, this game has some absolutely baffling design choices, some of the absolute worst level design I have ever experienced in a platformer, and some absolutely tedious and atrocious minigames that were a complete waste of time. So you have several playable characters in the game. Of course, Spyro is the main character, and for the most part his gameplay is solid. However, there are certain platforming sections of the game that were flat out broken. Like for example, sections of the game where Spyro has to grab and hold these bars and spin around them, jumping to the next area. This feature is flat out broken. I have so much footage of me trying these sections, and Spyro will literally just glitch right through the bars, not making any attempt to grab them, and fall to his death, having to respawn and try again. Spyro will also at times turn around for no reason whatsoever, and jump in the complete wrong direction. These sections are an absolute pain in the ass, and I personally wish Eurocom had just removed them from the game completely. A new character that the game introduces that you can play as is Blink the Mole. His levels take place in underground caverns, and you basically have to go through each level and plant bombs on the dark gems to destroy them. It's a tedious process, and I hated these levels personally. What's worse is once you complete the level for the Dragon Egg, you then have to go back in and do the whole thing again for the Light Gem, except it's harder. Completely boring and tedious. In addition to that, the game has several mini platforming sections for Blink in his levels, and these again are a complete pain in the ass. His character moves way too slow, his controls just feel clunky and unresponsive, and yeah, his levels were a complete joke. I really didn't like them. play as Hunter, who's returning from the previous games, and his levels I actually really liked. You use his bow and arrow and his archery skills, as well as jump kicks and melee attacks, to defeat enemies and find collectibles. I really enjoyed his levels personally, and I wish that there were more of them because his gameplay was more functional than the rest of the game. You play as Sparks, and his levels are absolutely atrocious and pointless. They're basically on-rail shooters, and not even good ones at that. You basically fly straight through a hallway, spamming the attack button till you reach the end of the hallway, and then you win. Insultingly easy and very boring. Why they couldn't have just brought back the excellent Sparks levels from Spyro 3, I have no idea. You also play as Sergeant Bird, and his levels basically are there to replace the Speedway levels from the previous games. The flying controls and shooting mechanics are fine, and quite fun to play with, but unfortunately the targets are all scattered in no particular order, making the whole thing nothing but a frustrating trial and error. So those are the playable characters. Spyro's gameplay is okay for the most part, but there are a few broken platforming sections. Hunter's gameplay is pretty good too, but Sparks and Blink's levels are a complete joke, and Sergeant Bird's levels are just frustrating in my opinion. You have several turret sections in the game, and I actually did enjoy these. These were pretty easy, but they were functional and did their bit to vary the gameplay. You can't really go wrong with a nice turret section from time to time. The game has several boss battles, and I actually really did like the boss battles. They are somewhat challenging and a lot of fun. You basically use Spyro's speed and dexterity, as well as your timing, to anticipate and avoid enemies' attacks before exploiting their one and only weakness. The final boss battle against Mecha Red was pretty awesome, and I really enjoyed the first boss battle against Nasty Nork, who of course is the original villain of the series. Despite the fact that his dialogue during and after the boss battle was absolutely cringy and stupid. Speaking of cringy and stupid, this game's overall tone and dialogue was embarrassing. There is so much forced humour in the game, so many annoying fourth wall breaks with some truly terrible voice acting. Spyro is now voiced by Jess Harnell, who is a good voice actor in his own right, but he does not suit Spyro. He replaces Tom Kenny from the previous games, and his voice just doesn't suit the character at all in my opinion. Spyro sounds like a junkie in this game.
Nasty Nork? Didn't I defeat that guy years ago? Huh. What are dark gems?
Moneybags has been replaced by some weird Indian version who repeats the same line of dialogue over and over and over again, and this just got tedious for me. And for some reason Sparks can now speak English.
Get through that crack in the wall. So you want me to go in there and do it for you?
Red is also about as cliche a villain as you can get, and his cutscenes and dialogue are just boring. The game also teases a boss battle against a giant mammoth that never happens. I'm sure Eurocom thought they were being funny, but yeah, they were not. So this game, in my personal opinion, was a massive disappointment. It has some great features like good boss battles, and it's a game that looks great, but its overall tone, voice acting, level design, and most of the minigames was just flat out awful. And even the things I liked in the game, like Hunter's levels, were just too short and were few and far between. So as far as I see it, Spyro: A Hero's Tale is another classic example of a game that is just style over substance. If I was to compare this game to some of the previous Spyro games, let's say the previous game, Enter the Dragonfly, that game was released in an unfinished and unpolished state, meaning so much of the game was just flat out missing, and it had so many glitches and technical issues. But despite everything that went wrong with that game, it's not a game that bored me personally. The overall concept of the game was pretty good in my opinion, and it worked for the most part, and I still enjoyed it for what it was. I thought the minigames and features of that game were fine. A Hero's Tale, on the other hand, in my personal opinion, has the opposite problem. It's a game that is technically sound, it's a game that's well polished and well made, and doesn't have the overall technical problems like glitches and bugs that Enter the Dragonfly had. But the problem here is that the concepts in this game are just bad. Most of the game feels like an absolute chore to play. So from my experience, this game is in many ways worse because despite it being a well-polished game that is full of content, it's just poorly designed in my opinion. I give A Hero's Tale a 4 out of 10. Now that might seem like a harsh score, and yeah, it's definitely not the worst platformer I've ever played, but for a Spyro game, I expect more. I expect better. Maybe you got more enjoyment out of the game than I did, but as a long-time fan of the Spyro series, this game just really didn't do it for me, and in my opinion it was a huge disappointment, and to me, it's no wonder why long-time Spyro fans barely ever talk about this game. Thanks for watching guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm sure some of you will disagree with my overall perception of this game, and if so, let me know in the comment section and we'll talk about it. Stay tuned for more retrospective video game reviews. I have a lot of reviews coming to the channel in the near future. So yeah, thanks for watching and God bless.